And Debbie, I got to get your perspective on the Supreme Court decision that just came in this morning regarding Jerusalem. I imagine we see eye to eye on that, but what's your take on it?
Well, this is a long-running case that has been going on actually since the Bush administration, and it's been a long-time U.S. policy. The Obama administration, the Obama State Department is definitely on board with it, that they don't recognize Jerusalem as part of Israel. So they won't list somebody's place of birth as Jerusalem, Israel. They'll just put Jerusalem. And it's really offensive because Jerusalem is and always has been the capital of Israel from the beginning of the state. And before that, it was part of Jordan, or Transjordan. So to say that part of it was part of Jordan later on, and Israel reclaimed it. But to say that this is not part of Israel is kind of offensive. It would be like if Mexico put on birth certificates that somebody was born in Los Angeles, but they wouldn't put Los Angeles, the United States, because they believe that California should be part of Mexico.
Good analogy.
It's offensive. And this case happened because this kid was born. They didn't want to put his birthplace as being in Israel, and he was a U.S. citizen.
Debbie, let me...
They've done this too with death certificates. When an American died in Israel, they accidentally, accidentally put Israel on the death certificate, and then they expunged it from the certificate. This is what the State Department does. Meanwhile, they'll never dispute anything for any other country or any other religion. They don't, even though, there are various lands that are in dispute between Muslim enemies, even though there are various lands, as I pointed out, that are in dispute. Mexico believes that part of the United States. A lot of these militant Mexicans, including the La Raza people, believe part of the United States is part of Mexico. They won't do that on people's birth and death certificates from there. I mean, it's Jerusalem, Israel, stupid. That's all I can say. And, this is consistent with the inconsistency of the United States, where they won't put the Israeli embassy in Jerusalem, and so on and so forth. They'll go out of their way for that. But yet, as I pointed out on my site recently, they sent U.S. embassy officials to go attack the Jewish settlers. The Palestinians, there are some Palestinians who happen to have been born by accident in America, and so they use their American citizenship. They go to the U.S. embassy, or the U.S. consulate, they get U.S. officials to go attack Israeli settlers. It's happened. I've written about it on my site, and it's just ridiculous that the United States will take sides in this. They should just recognize Israel as the capital, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and that's it. They don't do this with any other country.
Debbie, let me rewind a little bit. First of all, this is Adam Taxon with Debbie Schlussel here, and her website is debbieschlussel.com, and let me spell the last name for those unfamiliar with it, SCHLUSSEL.
DebbieDoesPolitics.com.
Oh, okay. I don't ever go on that one. But why don't you just take...
That'll just take you to the same place.
Okay. Can you just do a review of what the court was and what the 5-4 decision, which Anthony Kennedy, who was often the fifth vote, went the other way from our side on this. Can you just give a brief summary? And you are a lawyer too, I will add, as I am, but you actually practice. Can you just explain to people who may have not heard about this yet what went on about the case?
Yes. So Naomi and Avi Zivotofsky filed a suit against the State Department in the Washington, D.C. District of Columbia Federal District Court in September of 2003, demanding that their newborn son's place of birth be listed on his birth certificate as Jerusalem, Israel. But U.S. policy is just to denote the city as Jerusalem and leaving blank the country, because the U.S. doesn't want to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, not even the Green Line part of Jerusalem. And so they've been taking this case through the court system. It went to the Court of Appeals and so on. The Supreme Court said in this 5-4 decision that, was it 5-4? I think it was 6-3, actually.
Oh.
6-3 decision.
I just saw Kennedy and I just figured it was 5-4. That's probably my brain fart there.
It was 6-3. And by the way, the justice is siding with the Zivotofskys, and actually it's with Congress, are John Roberts, finally he did the right thing, Antonin Scalia, and Samuel Alito.
Oh, Clarence Thomas didn't.
What they said was, oh, I'm sorry?
Clarence Thomas did not. It's rare that he votes away from Scalia.
It is rare, and I'm kind of surprised about that. But what they did was, that the lawsuit was based on, Congress ended up passing a law that said that they would have to put Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and put Israel on the birth certificate. It's a 2002 law. And the Supreme Court said, no, Congress doesn't have to do that. In fact, the State Department doesn't have to do that. In fact, a country has foreign policy through one voice. It must speak with one voice, and that voice is the executive branch, not Congress. And that's always been the position, by the way, of the Bush administration, which opposed this in the first place, and then now the Obama administration, which I think believes even more strongly. As I pointed out, they sent U.S. Embassy officials to go fight Israeli settlers on behalf of the Palestinians. But that's what they did, was they invalidated this law that Congress made. And, it's really political, in my opinion, because the majority of Congress voted for this law. This is the will of the people. And the Supreme Court said, well, we don't care about the will of the people. We're political. We don't want to side with Israel. We want to side with the administrations, none of which want to recognize Israel as the capital, or Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It's really, as far as I'm concerned, as I said, hypocritical, because that's where this kid was born. He was not born in Jerusalem, Palestine. He was not born in Jerusalem, Jordan. He was not born in Jerusalem, Transjordan. He was born in Israel, period.
Or for our Lubavitcher friends, or Jerusalem, Brooklyn. Sorry, that's an inside joke.
It's funny because I've heard Palestinians refer to it as West Bank, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
They're taking over everywhere. What can I say?
That could mean two things. It could mean either the Lubavitchers, the Orthodox, or the Palestinians in Brooklyn, both of whom are very much there. But maybe that is the joke. But what do you say to, I don't know what Thomas was thinking, if there's even an additional opinion there from him, but maybe it's a federalism issue. Couldn't you make a case that this is simply an executive branch versus legislative branch thing, and therefore even as a pro-Israel conservative, you could support the decision?
I don't agree with that assertion. That the Supreme Court agreed with that. That was the Supreme Court's view. I believe that Congress does have a say in foreign policy. There is a reason why there are both House and Senate foreign relations committees. They do set foreign policy in a lot of ways. For example, Congress votes on which countries get most favored nation status.
Right.
That's a foreign policy tool. They vote on various human rights legislation against various different countries. For example, when the Soviet Union existed and they treated Jews and other prisoners of conscience horribly, Congress was very much at the forefront of that. Not only that, but Congress decides what the foreign budget is going to be when we give foreign aid to various countries. Congress decides that. That's not the executive branch. The executive branch will propose things and will send down their own budget. But it's just not the case that Congress has no say in foreign policy. They have a lot of say, and they should have a say, because, after all, you don't want the executive branch to have the complete say in anything. When they do, it's a problem, especially when you have presidents like Barack Obama and President Bush, who was basically a moderate Democrat.
Right. Well, is there any analogy to Taiwan here? I don't know how they do the situation with Taiwan and China, but often the Taiwan to Israel analogy is appropriate. Or do you just not know?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate, because I think that, in the case of Taiwan, it was a matter of which government we recognized, and, they were fighting against the communist China, and they were the freedom-loving Chinese in Taiwan. Here, there's a case of an existing government that has been there since 1948, that will be there, God willing, and this is their capital. It's part of their land. I don't think it's the same thing at all. It's not like somebody being born in Taiwan and saying that they want their birth certificate to say Taiwan Republic of China versus Taiwan China. I don't even think you can find any cases where the State Department changed that, but I just don't think it's the same comparison. There have always been, Jerusalem has always been the Jewish capital, even before there was Israel. There have always been Jews there. If you look at the writings of even somebody who is as disconnected as Mark Twain, who had no dog in this fight, Mark Twain said that he visited Israel, or then it was Jewish, or it was Palestine, but it was mostly Jewish. And he went around, he traveled around, and he said this was in the late 1800s that or sometime in the 1800s, that he saw a few wandering Arabs in various places, but Jerusalem, he saw Jews, and there was really nothing else going on there. So, to say that this is suddenly not Israel and not Jewish, when the Jewish temple that has been there for thousands of years is there, it's just absurd.
Yeah. And I think we've covered basically the main issues here in the couple of hours that have elapsed since the decision was given. But I just want to point out to listeners that they may have something to add, and often people have very worthwhile comments in the comments section, whether if this ends up on DebbieSchlissel.com or under the YouTube clip. We definitely welcome your comments and try to address them. Can we move on to the next topic, Debbie?
Yes. And by the way, I just want to say one other thing. The name of the child who was born, who's an American citizen, his name is Menachem Zivotofsky.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck spelling that one if you're not familiar with Jewish names. All right. Let's move on, Debbie.